Well, hello, hello. Good morning.
Hey, good
This is
morning, Enrique.
How are you, Lee?
Very good. And you?
Well, I'm amazing. I'm super happy to be here, and especially super happy on the subject that we're going to be talking today. So, what are we going to be talking today? You had an excellent, an amazing subject that we're going to be discussing.
Since we're all about businesses, about entrepreneurship, about network marketing, and about growing business in different countries, I was thinking about a leadership topic, and I was thinking about cross-cultural leadership, Enrique.
Well, you know what? I think that is an amazing subject to discuss today. Cross-cultural leadership it's really become something super important now that through the different social media platforms, I mean, we get to connect with people from all over the world.
Definitely it is. And more you meet people that are actually from different cultural backgrounds, so it's not that easy to define anymore. With our in our globalized society, we meet people from all over the world, and we have to adjust and have to understand how they tick, how they work, what they're expecting of business, right?
Totally agree. And especially, I mean, this year it has become very interesting to see how in the past we had text, then we had pictures that we were sharing on social media, then video kicked in very strong, and then now it's audio
Yeah.
and audio interaction live. So it's amazing to see how the social media has been transforming. But what could we start with?
It's so many different platforms that actually it's like astonishing that we actually are able to make it without developing a cultural intelligence. And this is something we are definitely going to discuss today. How you as a leader can start developing your cultural intelligence, what culture actually is, and how it influences basically everything we do during the day. So, Enrique, I know you have a team, a very big team you're working with, and they're members from different countries. What different countries, what people from different countries do you have in your team?
Well, at this point, mainly in our team, we have people from all the Latino markets or different countries in Latin America, and also people within the Latino market in the US. And I do have to say that during all these years, I've had amazing stories. And let me just tell you one. I'm giving this lecture in Peru about 6 or 7 years ago, and I started using this word. And I noticed at some point that every time I used that word, I had a group of ladies in the back that were kind of mumbling and they were kind of laughing up to a point where I said, "Hey, wait a minute, stop. Let's okay. I know I'm saying something that means a different way or means different here in your country than what I'm supposed to or what I'm transmitting right now. So please, ladies, tell me about this. What am I saying? What is this word that I'm using that makes you laugh? Okay, so they're very shy, but one of them said, I mean, you're implying something different than what you want or what you're meaning. So, and that here is a sexual word.
I want to know the word, Enrique. I want to know the word.
No, 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 no. I'm not going to say the word. I'm
You're
not
not
going to
gonna
say the word.
say.
But really, it implied that they were having
Yeah.
sex.
Yeah, yeah, and it's something completely different in Costa Rica, and maybe someone from Cuba, from Colombia, from Panama would understand something way different. So it's really interesting. That's one really interesting topic, and it's just about verbal communication. And
It's
then
just about verbal.
how you say it or what your expectations are when you're talking about meetings, for example, or what a good speaker should speak like. That's way different in so different cultures. So there's an analogy I really love, and it's culture is the water in which we swim. And just like a fish, we don't know what water is. We take it for granted. And this is something which you could start making a big difference if you start realizing that culture and this water in which you swim, or in Japan they say read the air. The air you're reading is not the different. It's not the same thing for the different cultures, right? So, what culture is actually about is not necessarily the country culture. And this is something many people think. When you think about culture, what do you think of, Enrique? When I'm talking about
Well,
culture, what would you say? What is culture? What is culture for you?
what is culture for me? Culture are the different habits, the different ways that people live in different areas. And cultural structure or cultural behavior, it's really how people have been taught since they're little on the different things that you will do in terms of, I mean, how do you talk? Your pronunciation is part of the culture. How do you eat? How do you dress? At least that's for me.
Yeah, how you
And
communicate, how you think of the
yeah,
world, what's right, what's wrong for you. So it's a big topic. It's a very big thing, and I really like the definition. Tell me what you think of my definition. Culture is how we do things here.
that's a very nice, sweet, and short definition for culture. Like, can you say that again? I need to write it. I need to write it. Come on.
Culture is how we do things here. And
Culture.
I really love it how we do things here, because it's such a big topic, and it's not over defining stuff. It's leaving open so many things to interpretation, and this is how culture actually is. And a mistake oftentimes we make, if we haven't really thought about the big topic culture, is we think country culture is the same as actually culture itself, but it's not. So I'm, for example, German. You couldn't say all Germans tick the same way. So there are some parameters that are normal in Germany, or what we think is normal in Germany. Yeah, that's true. But not all 83 million Germans think the same way, right? Not all 4 million Costa Ricans think the same way. So we shouldn't make the mistake to stereotype just because of the cultural origin of a person. Um, and this is something very interesting, because actually, what makes culture? How do we grow to think a certain way, to communicate a certain way? And that's something you said. And I think it's very interesting because um, what makes us the way we are? Our education, our education. Are you still there? Yeah.
Yes, I'm still
It is.
here. I'm still
Okay.
here.
Okay. So our education, what kind of school we went to, how our parents did bring us up, if they were more like a free spirit education type of parent, or if they were more strict. Um, if we went to, for example, sports club when we were a kid, all of those things teach us different ways of thinking, right? What kind of school did we go to? What kind of university did we go to? What kind of experience do we have working for companies, for example? If we had experience to go to do continuous education, if we went to a congress together. So all of this shapes our way of thinking. So this is everything of this is part of culture. So you can't just say this is a person from Costa Rica, so the person ticks like this. This is a person from Colombia, so she or he is like this. Or I oftentimes hear she's a millennial, or he's a baby boomer, or it doesn't mean that you think like the stereotype they try to impose on people that are from this generation. And this is something we have to really open up our mind about.
How would we apply this into the business world, especially if we apply this into the business world, and right now the business world in terms of social media, that's how we're communicating with people right now.
Oh my God, it's so important. If I would have known all the stuff I've read now, and I still have a lot of stuff to learn and to experience, but it would have been so much easier when I came to Costa Rica 12 years, 13 years ago. So um, there are some different cultural parameters. You could say it's kind of like a cultural map, um, which could help us a lot in business and which do help us a lot in business. So I like to differentiate 8 different parameters. So, for example, communication is one. So we have low context cultures and high context cultures, for example. What's the difference? So um, a high context culture is, for example, Costa Rica. So in Costa Rica, you actually have to read the air in many of the expressions people would tell you. For example, on meetings, um, um, when are you gonna have the report ready, or when can we have a team meeting? And people in Costa Rica would use Tico time. People in Costa Rica would say, "Yeah, ahorita, later." What means later for Costa Rican? That's a very interesting concept. If you would say it to a German, in Germany we are from a low context culture, which means we think that everything has to be explained very explicitly. So where a Tico would be okay with, yeah, later we meet, a German would expect you to say, we are going to meet at 4:30 p.m. tomorrow evening. So about communicating, about time, about what is a good leader, um, how to negotiate, what trust means, how to disagree with people in a team. Those are all very, very important factors in business.
Amazing. And even if we talk about Latinos, which of course I'm a Latino, so um, even one same word, depending on the expression, may mean something different. So in that sense, when you're doing business in a different country, that's one of the things you have to understand since the beginning.
Yeah,
And and if you want to really have an impact in that community or that country or that region, you have to understand what that means. If
yeah.
if I'm a Latino going to Germany and I just say ahorita, I'm gonna get into trouble.
Yeah, you're gonna get into trouble, and most likely you're not gonna understand why people react in a bad way. So
Well,
it's
in that sense, it's time is one of the factors for me, but expressions on how to be respectful when you meet someone may also influence the
wow.
communication with that person. If
Yeah,
if I if on I mean if we come and say if I say hi to someone in in some parts of the U.S., let's say in the East Coast, and I use ma'am, may I talk to you, or ma'am, how are you? The person might get upset. I have to use the name Lee. How are you? Instead of ma'am.
yeah, it's
So
not common.
yeah, it's not common, and it just happened to me about a month ago, talking to somebody in Mexico. For respect in my country, we say doña, which is like ma'am.
That
Okay.
happened to me too in Mexico, Enrique. You're not the only one.
And I go,
Like, what?
Doña Elis, yeah, Doña Elizabeth. And I was talking to this lady that's called Elizabeth. And I go, Doña Elizabeth, how are you? Doña Elizabeth. And at some point, the lady went up to me and said, stop saying Doña to me. I'm not a Doña. I'm not a ma'am.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. That happened to me too. They were like, "That's a little too much, Lee." So they're like, they would understand because I'm German. So anyway, it's my second language. So they were like, "Yeah, she doesn't really get it." But
uh-huh.
yeah, they said the same thing to me. Why are you saying Don all the time? That's too much in Mexico, and in Costa Rica, it's just normal.
And coach, yeah. So, I mean, it's little steps or little things that we have to take into consideration when we have this multicultural environment,
Yeah.
and that also translates into how you sell
Well, definitely a
and
lot.
I mean, how you sell and how you present the pricing. It's totally different in once again in the different regions where you are. There's
Yeah.
some places
Yeah.
where. Mhm, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, there's in some places we have have to give a higher price because their culture is always about bargaining. And that's Mexico. Mexico, you have to give three times the amount you're going to charge and then start lowering pricing because they're always going to pressure you for a lower price.
That's very interesting. And that's something in Germany wouldn't happen. So
I
in
know
Germany,
that's
someone
something
would
in Germany.
expect to tell you exactly the amount. And if you're moving later with the amount, that's like suspicious, very suspicious. So you can't really become an expert on all the countries in all the cultures in the world. That's very difficult, right? But you should start becoming an expert on the cultures you're actually trying to do social selling with. You have a team, and sometimes it's such a big market. I mean, Enrique, I know you have people, team members from Ecuador, from Colombia, from Costa Rica, from the US, from Panama, from, wow, Chile. It's just a lot.
Spain,
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 and
Italy,
uh-huh. Yeah.
uh, and so forth. Yeah, but you know what? After several years of being under this situation of having this multicultural communication, I'm also understanding, and I'm starting to to see a change. To be quite honest, and that change becomes where people are starting to interact also multicultural, especially in the past 18 months. So then they get online and they understand that they're talking with other persons from different countries. So they're starting to hear different ways of expression.
Yeah.
So, what I truly believe that's happening right now in that sense is that we're starting to become a multicultural society where our emotional intelligence about how people communicate with us has become more adaptable than in the past. When you had somebody come in 20, 30 years ago, come in into your country or into your region,
Yeah.
and they said things a certain way, everybody would kind of be into shock. But now people online are starting to interact, and I was at this new audio social media platform where people interact just with audio, and there's 13, 14 different countries there. So I'm there every day. I spend some time there in this social media. I'm there every day, and this is happening to all of us.
Yeah,
So
that's
now
true.
we get online and understand that we might be talking with somebody that might want to mean something different than what they're really saying. But we've become adaptable, we've become flexible, which in the past we would be shocked. Now we just kind of laugh on what the person may be saying if it means something totally different in our country.
I think that's a very interesting point because kind of like we are all on a platform, we are all talking, we are all foreigners. So there's not this mindset, the way I think is the correct way. We are kind of like opening up our minds and understanding ourselves in a different way, hearing people from different countries. One big thing is obviously a language barrier, right? If you put
Yes.
yourself into the shoes of some other person, which is also talking in a different language, not his or her native language, it's way different. And if you're in the same situation, you definitely understand it in a better way. So I think this kind of platforms are very interesting to work on our cultural intelligence because there's actually a concept about cultural intelligence, which is emotional intelligence evolved into culture. Let's define it this way, and we can
Uh
work
huh.
a lot on this. And I think we as cross-cultural leaders have to, if we want to be successful working with people from different countries. There's another thing you said, which is very interesting, and it's globalization makes us more open to different ways of thinking, different ways of talking. Um, and if you go 50 years, 20, well, 30, 50 years, maybe not even 50, maybe 30, back in time, it wasn't that normal to see people traveling like all over the world, right? It wasn't that normal. And 50 years or 100 years, it wasn't common at all to see people from other countries just being there and talking in your language or in a foreign language. So people would be more enclosed in their own culture. So country cultures would be way stronger. Ways of thinking where we are, the ways we have to do
Hmm.
things where we are, would be way stronger than nowadays. There are many studies. Some experts say it's good, it's a good thing. Other experts say it's not a good thing. Why, Enrique? Because if we have a globalized main culture, people from not that strong cultures have to adjust to just one single culture, which doesn't really help in a multicultural society. Because if it's multicultural, someday we're all going to be in a pot. It's a melting pot, and it's just going to be one soup, not
Uh,
1,000, 2,000 different ones. So it's kind of like, I don't know. We have to see how it evolves, but it's the world we live in, right?
well, I mean, and it's something that it's going to be very hard to manage or to control
Yeah,
because that's the internet. That's that's the world
that's
we're in
connection.
right now.
Hmm.
So in that sense, we've never been connected as we are connected today. And we've never been able to have so much info, be in contact with so many people from different parts of the world. I mean, we're actually, and I read a book many years ago that it says we're moving from countries to groups, to power groups, to and also, unfortunately, to big corporations.
Yeah.
The world's going to be managed not by world leaders, but it's going to start to be managing by corporations.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest, this is part of the things that's happening right now.
Yeah, and this is gonna influence in a very, very strong way on what we think as a global community, what's right, what's wrong, what's the way to do business, what not, what's acceptable, what not, how we should sell, how not,
Hmm.
how we shouldn't be selling.
Hmm.
So definitely that's something interesting we have to keep in touch and have to study, because it's going to be very important for global leaders to understand this evolution of culture. So we were talking about cultural intelligence, which I think is very important for us leaders. And I just want to give you three tips on how to improve cultural intelligence as a leader with teams from different countries. So there's one first very big point, which is called intercultural engagement. What is intercultural engagement about? Basically, it's about emotions, about putting heart into actually every communication, every interaction with your team members, and asking yourself questions, understanding yourself and your way of behaving and your belief system somehow. Because if you are able to understand yourself and what your belief systems are and what your cultural background are, you're going to be able to open up to new things, to different ways of thinking, because you're going to understand that in your context, it's okay. But if you move out, people think a different way. So you could ask yourself some questions, like, for example, am I interested in getting to know people? Or am I more like an introvert? Isn't it something that comes naturally to me? Am I actually skilled building relationships? How did I do in the past? How skilled am I? Maybe I have to do some extra reading on this. Maybe it's not about the culture. Maybe it's about my skill sets. So, kind of like evaluating where I am at this point, and then opening up in a humbled way to other things and other behaviors and other belief systems. And one big thing I would like to ask you with your experience is um, I think perspective is something very important, Enrique. Perspective, putting your perspective into actually into context. So if I'm talking about perspective on teamwork, do you have any story or anything that happened to you where you thought you were like communicating in a very clear way, that your perspective was the same as the perspective of another person and it didn't turn out to be the same idea or the same concept? You were thinking
Oh
something
my,
very different.
oh my God, that happens all the time, to be quite
Hmm.
honest. And that's that's why it's super important to understand and to ask a lot of questions when you have communicated. Um, many times I've tried to convey a message and the person receives it differently. In my
Totally.
professional experience, especially in the marketing side, I always tell my teams, we as marketing people send out a message, and the first thing we have to understand is how the general public, how our potential customers receive and understand that message.
Yeah.
Our marketing may be the best and we may think it's the best, but the person that has to think that and the person that has to verify that has to be the potential customer.
Exactly.
That's what it's important. So if we're not communicating a way they're going to understand and it's going to be something attractive to them, then we're not doing a good job. So I think we used this in a previous conversation, a previous podcast, and we spoke about plan, do, review, which I integrate in my life in everything I do. I plan, I do, and then I review.
Yeah.
And in this multicultural environment where we need to adapt, and in this multicultural intelligence that we need to have, that is something that has to be there all the time.
Yes.
We have to do stuff, we have to plan it, do it, and then review.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you brought the whole cultural context to a very understandable and relatable topic, like our target market. And oftentimes, we are not our target market. So, and even though a person like me is my target market, doesn't mean that everyone is thinking or is looking for the same thing or would understand the message I'm trying to provide, right? And I think we have to become skilled in noticing what are other people's perspectives, right? We have to become skilled in paraphrasing, asking also sometimes awkward questions, but questions we have to make because otherwise we would just assume and we wouldn't really have a continuous improvement a process in our work, and that's so important as leaders.
No, totally, totally. I would kind of come ahead and say in this, well, I mean, culture intelligence, I would have to say that knowledge is very important, that we sit down and understand our market, our target, uh, then the strategy. We'll strategize that, and then there has to be the action process. So it's most mainly the for me the knowledge and strategies, the plan, the action would be to do, and then the drive would be. I mean, how do we adapt? What else do we do? Would be the part of plan, do, review, is that third part of drive. How can we adapt? What interest did they have? A motivation? Was did Are they confident of what we're transmitting
Yeah,
or what we're communicating in terms of sales? So
definitely.
it may become at this part of multicultural a four-step process for me. Uh, have a lot of knowledge, create the strategy, do action, and the drive to adapt.
The drive to adapt, the the attitude or the mindset to being able to change whenever it's necessary, not thinking that my way of doing stuff is the right way. It's just a way, right? I think that's something very, very important you said. There's another step on developing cultural intelligence, and actually second step is the cultural understanding. In other words, I start understanding myself and then I dive very deep into cultural understanding and acquiring cognitive skills, like reading about my own culture, reading or studying or learning or talking with other people from other cultures, like diving really deep into my target market and into the people's background I'm working with. So this is cognitive skills creation, and it's actually about studying. It's really about um, understanding, getting more and more and more information, defining what the concept of culture actually means. Because oftentimes I see it's very mind blowing for people to understand that a country culture is not the same as the whole complexity of culture. So just understanding this makes a big mindset change, a big shift for many, many leaders. Get to know your own culture, and also understand what knowledge do I have about cross-cultural leadership, because many people don't have any additional cognitive knowledge about this topic. They don't even know that this exists. And if I start understanding that this is actually a very big thing, I can improve. So it's like the phrase, I don't know what I don't know until I know it, right?
No, I love that. I love that phrase. I totally agree. Um, but it's important for people to understand that the only way that we're going to be able to communicate better, to be able to send out a message better in a multicultural environment, is communicating, is talking, is sending out that message, and then understand how it was relayed and how it was understood. So I guess what I want to say is make it happen. Just do it.
Yeah, and I would like to add
Yeah.
one thing to this,
Hmm.
because, yeah, it's about communicating, it's about relating, but it's also about reviewing my attitude. Because sometimes you can communicate and you can paraphrase and you can do whatever, but it just doesn't get into your head that maybe your way of doing things isn't the best way. It's just one way. So you also have to work a lot on your ego. You have to be coachable. You have to actually want to understand and to put yourself into the shoes of someone else, because oftentimes we don't really want that. We just want people to understand our way of thinking, right? And this happens. I mean, this happens to leaders all the time.
Totally agree. Totally agree. That's um, for me. That is a key factor to success in anything you do in life.
Yeah.
We need to understand other people. It's not about us. It's about others.
Actually deeply wanting to understand other people's viewpoints, other people's situation, like really deeply wanting to. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. And there's a third point, Enrique, on developing your
Okay, what's the
cultural
third part?
intelligence.
Okay.
So, I think the most important is the mindset, as we just were paraphrasing again. But when we have the right mindset, when we have the knowledge, then it's about practical actions, about actual intercultural communication. And how do we communicate? I think you did mention many different platforms. I mean, we have written communication, we have text messaging, we have emails, we have meetings, live meetings, online meetings, but there are different meeting styles that are expected in different countries. Their leadership styles expected in different countries. So it's a way different thing. Um, Having a leader, for example, a respectable leader from Denmark is an egalitarian leader, who takes into consideration all the different viewpoints of all the people in the meeting, right? So everyone can
Hmm.
talk to
Hmm.
everyone like on a friend base. If you go to Russia, that's not normal. So people won't really, they have a really high expectation, a feeling of hierarchy that is very important. So people would interact a different way. If you go to Latin America, because sometimes because of a very risky social context, people don't really want to risk to say their opinion like that free as a person from, I don't know, Denmark, for example, would do. So you actually have to understand that to be able to put your communication into the right perspective or into the right way.
Hmm. Very interesting.
How
And
the wording of an email is, for example. This is very different. So I'm always comparing with Germany because that's stuff I personally experienced, and there's something I would like to share, a little story. So
okay.
several years ago, I was working for a big U.S. American company, located in different countries, but I was working in Costa Rica for them. So when I was writing my email, I was writing with my German mindset. So I would explain in a very detailed way the why. I would request some change, for example, give examples for it, um, and then like all the step by step, how, why, who, when, where. So everything would be in this
Okay.
very good and structured email. So I figured that no one really was reading my emails, Enrique. People didn't really want to have the whole why, who, when hypothesis and everything. They didn't want to read that. But a German mind is kind of like, this is what we want to hear. Um, I had to adjust. I had to adjust because people from different countries have different ways of communicating, right? So I would start putting in the main message in my first phrase in the email, and then putting in some additional information below, just in case people want to know. The majority of the people don't really want to know. So, but they would read my email because they would read just the first important part, and then it worked out very well. But it took me several years to understand that, Enrique.
To understand. Well, and that's really amazing. It's totally true. It's totally true. Uh, People, well, first of all, people don't want to read. That's my perspective. And then you have to kind of do an executive resume at the beginning. And if somebody wants to expand, they can expand. And I can understand how the German cultural where we from the outside say,
Yes.
oh, they're very boxed and it has to be one, two, three, and that is amazing. At least for me, that's amazing
it's
because
a
I'm
different
not that
way of
structured.
it's a different way of thinking about stuff because um, this executive briefing thing is something that works very well for the US market. And this is something people from the US normally expect. So why are you doing that for? What is the outcome? Tell me the outcome. And if I like the outcome, I may be I may be willing to understand how you're going to do it. And in Germany, you do it exactly this the other way around. You don't tell the outcome before explaining what you're going to do. And if you would do it the executive briefing way in Germany, it wouldn't work. People wouldn't really read your email, for example. So it's something very interesting. And in Costa Rica, it's way different. And in Colombia, it's way different. And in Ecuador, it's way different. So don't commit a mistake thinking that everything in Latin America is the same. It's not. It's so
It's
different.
it's totally
Unbelievably
different.
different.
Well, going into the U.S. market, it's different on the east side than on the west side. It's
It's
different on
such
the
a big
south than on the
country.
north.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
yeah,
It is.
it's amazing. Well, I mean, it has been an amazing subject today. You spoke about three steps. Let's just, what are those three steps again? And and that
Sure.
way we can wrap it up
Sure.
of what we have been talking today and give our final comments on it.
So, as an intercultural leader, a person who works with people from different countries, from different cultural backgrounds. Is it in network marketing? Is it in a traditional business? If you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter because anyway, in our today's society, you're gonna be in contact with people from all over the world. So this is for you. This is for basically everyone. How to start developing your cultural intelligence to be a successful leader. There are three important steps. The first one is getting to understand yourself better. Cultural engagement, emotions. It's about heart. It's about sometimes asking those awkward questions to understand each other in a deeply profound way. And also questioning yourself. What are my beliefs? What is my belief system? Step number two, cognitive skills. So, reading, understanding about your culture, about other cultures. How do you handle cross cultural communication? Because there's so much important information out there which could help you so much. So just opening up your mind about what culture actually is. And then the third step is basically putting this information into action, practical actions, actually starting to communicate in an intercultural, intelligent way. How do you do it? for example, in email wording, in meeting styles, understand leadership styles, understanding expectations, understanding hierarchy, and so on. So there's so many things you can do to actually become the leader you want to be, you're born to be.
Amazing. Cultural intelligence. An amazing topic for today. Lee, thank you. Thank you very much for this time we've spent together. And we've spoken about very interesting things today. I took a lot of notes, to be quite frankly, that I will review my notes and especially understand that we have to always be learning. We have to always be investigating in order to be able to adapt to the social culture that
Yes.
we have in this world right now.
Yeah, I
So
really encourage everyone to do their studying, to understand the topic in a deeper way, to maybe look for a cultural coach or a training, to actually be able to level up in this terms, in those terms.
amazing. Well, Lee, thank you very much for being here with me again. And everybody that's been listening, we'll see you next week in our next podcast. Okay?
Thank you. Have a
Bye
great
bye.
day.
Take care.
Bye.